Welcome to all of you to the site event on mobilizing climate finance for implementing NDCs and low carbon technology innovation. We apologize for this little delay, but this is actually the very first site event of this COP in this room, and there's always a bit of things to sort out before one can really get started. This was about the broadcast, which we couldn't get going. But let's get started. This is the site event organized by Vietnam and the Freie University of Berlin, Free University of Berlin. My name is Christoph Feldkötter. I work for GIZ. I'm heading GIZ's climate change team, and I will be your moderator for the event today. Before we get started, let me point out and note with very much appreciation that just 4 days ago, Vietnam has ratified the Paris Agreement on the 3rd of November. I think that's a very good, a very auspicious occasion for this event. And it's just about the right time to have the event today. As you are aware, our question today is how to mobilize funding for the implementation of the NDCs. We have a number of eminent speakers here. Our Vietnamese presenters will speak on how Vietnam intends to make use of international funding mechanisms and how far they judge that Vietnam is already prepared for implementing the NDC. Then we have contributions from Germany and from Switzerland who will educate us and speak about additional perspectives on the question of implementing the NDCs. Let's get right into things. I would like to start with our first presenter to my left here. This is Mr. Pham Van Tan of Monre in Vietnam. Mr. Tan is a key negotiator and a member of the Vietnam negotiation delegation. He has very rich experience in the fields of climate change impact assessment, climate policy and climate strategies. And has been around in the climate negotiations for quite a long time. He was also the main author of one of the main authors of the Vietnam NDC. And he's currently Deputy Director General of the Department of Meteorology, Hydrology and Climate Change in the Ministry of Natural Resources and the Environment, that is Monre. Mr. Tan, welcome. Very glad that you will be opening the event today, and the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the, I would like to thank the organizers for providing us this great opportunity to introduce you with our experience as well as the needs of Vietnam to implement our NDC. As Chris already mentioned that a few days ago, the government of Vietnam already ratified the Paris Agreement. But one thing you may not know is that besides the ratifying of the Paris Agreement, the government of Vietnam also approved one program. It's an implementation plan of the Paris Agreement in Vietnam until 2030. So I think it's the very first country to approve this plan. As you know that after COP21, we signed with the requirements of the government of Vietnam to assign us to make our progress to ratify the Paris Agreement. We also make tremendous activities to prepare the implementation of the Paris Agreement. And with the involvement of whole stakeholders in Vietnam, include the government, business sectors, NGOs, and also, of course, development partner. We progress with many activities since COP21, and then the plan is approved by the government on 28th of October this year. So the components of the plan, we have the 5 main components: mitigation, adaptation, of course, And then we have transparency system. We have resources, include the human resources, technology resources, finance resources, and governance. Of course, for today, the section is focused on financing. So we would like to introduce you one of the plan program that we use it as a mean of implementation for of the Paris Agreement in Vietnam. Uh, the program name Support Program to Respond to Climate Change, or SPRCC in short, in Vietnam. It's established by the government of Vietnam since 2009 with the initiative by JICA and AFD front, and currently is involved with JICA, AFD, World Bank, SIDA Canada, Swim Bank of Korea, and Defense Australia. The main ministries, we have 10 ministries involved with this program, with around 50 department levels of the country involved in this program. And then currently it serves as an important policy dialogue platform for climate change in Vietnam. So every year, the development partners sit together with different ministries of Vietnam, different department of Vietnam, and we agreed what kind of policy we should develop during that year. And uh, uh, by the end of this year, the development partner come and then discuss with our ministries, identify which level of completement of the action plan or policy action in the country, and then they will the release fund to government budget. So currently, we until 2015, we get around $1 billion for the program. Some is a soft loan, some is as a grant, as you can see in the screen. And as it is important that the Paris Agreement is adopt, government of Vietnam requests us to make this program until 2020 at least, with three components. Before, it's only one component is policy. That means we only focus on policy development. When we get fund, that funds go directly to government budget, and then the government will spend what the government thinks is important, and then spend it for the climate change activities. But for the period 2016 to 2020, so the program will focus on three components. The first one is policy, of course. That is the mean for our policy reform and capacity building. That means if the government agencies want to do something, to develop some policies, they can get technical assistance from different development partners. And the fund will go to the investment projects. So we also identify what kind of project or activities in Vietnam should spend that kind of money. And for these periods, we expect to get 1.2 billion US dollar, but only for 2006, 2017, 2018, JICA already committed 10 billion yen per year. World Bank 210 million for 3 years, and AFD around 100 million euro for 2 years. So the program is focused in widely, it's adaptation, mitigation, and policy, etc. So we have 8 team goals for focusing the implementation of this program. That's 8 components here is identified by the climate change strategy and green growth strategies approved by the government of Vietnam in 2011 and 2012, and it's still valid for continuing until 2020. So in brief, we can see that the support program to respond to climate change is a very important, one of the important means of implementation of Paris Agreement in Vietnam, because we get not only the budget for activities, but through the program, through the dialogue between Vietnam ministries and development partner, we can identify the uh, priority area of policy to develop. So with Paris Agreement, Vietnam, we see that we change significantly from volunteer commitment basis come to obligated one. So policy needs significantly change from volunteer to obligated one. This program we see it can help us to do that. So it's the program is quite comprehensive with three components: investment, policy, and capacity building. So it supports each other. And we also try to open the room for inviting other development partners to join. Very welcome. So this is my address. So if you would like to know more about the program, as well as the NDCs of Vietnam Paris Agreement plan in the implementation plan in Vietnam, I'm happy to answer. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tan. This was a very concise presentation, which I think very well shows the challenge of implementing the NDC and the number of partners and the number of issues that one needs to address. Our next speaker to my right here is Axel Michailova, who I think is very well known in this community. Axel has a PhD in economics and works on international climate change policy instruments and on the UNFCCC process since 1994, so since the very beginning. He's managing director of the consultancy Perspectives and part-time researcher at the Institute of Political Science at the University of Zurich. Axel was also the lead author for the chapter on policies and measures in the 4th and 5th assessment report of the IPCC. He has written more than 100 research articles and various publications. And today he will give us his insight on how can the Paris market mechanisms support financing of the NDCs. Axel, I will open your presentation and over to you.
Yeah, thanks a lot. And I'm really happy and congratulate my Vietnamese friends to the ratification of the Paris Agreement, which is a very important step. Various contexts in NDC support of NAMA in the cement sector, support of CDM activities. So I've been really engaged, and of course I am really happy to see the plans for the future, and I hope I'll be able to contribute to what can actually the new mechanisms under the Paris Agreement bring for NDC financing. So I will first look into what are options for financing conditional elements of the NDC. After the expectations for climate finance relating to NDCs have been clarified, then I will look into what I call integrated climate finance, how an overall architecture could look like now as the rules are being defined here. And then I will come into one aspect that also is contemplated in Vietnam and that could play an important role, upscaled crediting for policy instruments. And finally, what does this mean for the negotiations here? How should the rule setting be done? So to start, all the NDCs of developing countries see a very important role for financing coming from the international level. Essentially, 85% of the developing countries NDCs ask for international climate finance, only 15% do not. And one needs to be very clear that the financing volumes requested overall are really high. It's almost 2 trillion US dollars. And of course, if one now looks at the 10-year time frame of most NDCs, it means that the total is almost 200 billion, which is double the amount that has always been the magic number of international climate finance. So that already gives us an order of magnitude of the challenge. And it also shows that public financing from the industrialized countries will not be able to cover all the requests. So what are the concrete options that we currently see for financing conditional elements of the NDCs? Theoretically, there are many options, multilateral options, Green Climate Fund, there are other funds under the UNFCCC, Adaptation Fund. And of course, then we have the multilateral activities outside the official UNFCCC remit, which is the Climate Investment Funds or the NAMA facility. But just to give you an order of magnitude, of course, Green Climate Fund with 10 billion is already substantial. The LDCF, SCCF are minuscule, a few hundred million. Adaptation Fund is big, but is no longer really fed by new funding as the CDM market that financed it has dried up. Climate investment funds have seen a very important financing, but only for a restrained number of countries. And for the NAMA facility, well, which has just had its fourth round, well, it's about 200 million. So it's not the world that can be financed. Of course, there is a lot of bilateral climate finance around, but again, it has its strings attached. And so the access to these options is not that easy. Just to give an example, the NAMA facility has a success rate of 10%. And in the fourth round, more than double last year's submissions came in. So you see the competition is huge. So I would summarize that the climate finance access is more difficult than commonly thought. And of course, it has high transaction cost. Writing proposals for NAMA facility, for Green Climate Fund is costly in human terms, but also in terms of the financing to get things going. So that, of course, now brings me to the role of the Paris mechanisms. You know that under Paris Agreement, we have the Article 6 on market mechanism. It has two main components, the Article 6.4, which will be a multilateral mechanism, and the Article 6.2, which will be more on the bilateral level. And what I would think in the long run we should try to achieve is a combination of these mechanisms with other sources, what I would call integrated climate finance. So we have the market that actually does the job for the options that have low mitigation costs. And then for those options that are more difficult and more expensive, we stack the various elements. So we have a portion that comes through the market, then we have another portion that comes through multilateral sources, and then the bilateral sources can also do their trick. The issue, of course, is that this is only possible if there is serious demand for the credits from the market mechanisms. And that's, of course, the big elephant in the room. We know that currently credits from the CDM sell at 40 cents, that the pilot auctioning facility of the World Bank has a price that is around $2.4. And this, of course, is not sufficient to make markets play a real role. So eventually, the market needs to reflect the real ambition of the Paris Agreement. That means the demand needs to be commensurate to the overall ambition. And another aspect, and this is now a methodological aspect, is the issue of the baseline determination. What should be the crediting baseline? Here, of course, in this graph, I use the usual economic approach where everything that is profitable should be financed in a unilateral fashion, and then things that have positive costs could be done through the markets. Of course, I know there are many other interpretations around, but one needs to be very transparent to discuss this during the negotiations. Otherwise, eventually, the markets will not be able to play the key role they should play. And the international climate finance might be going into dead-end streets. So just now to come to the next issue, the upscale crediting. You know, the CDM was a project mechanism. It had some programmatic component, but overall, these were distinct activities. Now, under the Paris Agreement, we have the path free for upscaling to go towards policy instruments that can generate credits or even credit activities in whole sectors. And I think what has happened in Vietnam to date would be very conducive to test policy crediting. For For example, when we developed the NAMA and the cement sector, we were wondering what could now be the approach to really get this mitigation done in all the cement plants in Vietnam. And that, of course, would require a policy instrument, but this policy instrument would have to be underpinned by the revenue from credits sold abroad. And of course, the mechanisms can also coexist. For example, for certain sectors, you will focus more on the project side. For other sectors, you would focus more on the policy instrument side. For example, transport sector is notoriously difficult to capture, and that would be a very nice case, for example, for sectoral crediting. How does this relate specifically to the Paris mechanism? It relates to the degree of the international rule setting that needs to be checked, whether the rule setting will only be for what I call the Sustainable Development Mechanism or 6.4, or whether there also will be sufficient international rule setting for the cooperative approaches under Article 6.2. A big question will be, will the CDM survive and be brought into the Article 6.4, or will we have to build everything from scratch again? And then, of course, bilateral mechanisms generate the risk of race to the bottom. We've seen it with the voluntary markets, with the fragmentation of markets that has happened since Copenhagen. And of course, there is a risk now for the Copenhagen Agreement. So essentially, the key questions that need to be addressed now in the rule setting are, how can we encourage blending of various sources of climate finance and market mechanism revenues? And for example, the Green Climate Fund recently sent out a signal, which I found a bit difficult, where it asked a CDM project in Chile not to sell its CERs. And I think if the CERs accrue, they should be sellable. Of course, we need now methodologically to tackle the very critical question how a mitigation policy instrument becomes additional. And there are a lot of discussion still needs to be done. We know from the CDM it took a few years to get the additionality sorted out, and we need to do the same now for the upscaled crediting mechanisms as well. We also need to have a transparent discussion on how to determine the baseline under NDCs when market mechanisms are to be used. Because otherwise we'll run into the specter of hot air, and we need to be very careful to avoid the same problems that we've seen in the countries in transition in the late 1990s. We need to ensure that the Article 6.2 doesn't serve as an avenue for a race to the bottom. We need a level playing field for all mechanisms. And to finalize my presentation, we need to use the lessons learned from the CDM. And the CDM is a well-tested vehicle, so it should feed into the Article 6.4 as far as possible. Thank you very much, and I'm looking forward to the discussion.
Axel, thank you very much. This was an excellent presentation, and I must admit, this is one presentation I would need to have a look at once again to understand all its richness. This is a good moment to announce that of course, we will be uploading all these presentations on the web for you to download them later. The entire event will be documented, and it will all be available on the website. Our next presenter is Mareike Well, to my left here. She's from the Free University of Berlin, our second host of the day. Mareike is a research associate in the Division of Educational Research and Social Systems. She is employed within a sub-project which is called Behind the Scenes within the German Research Association in the research unit on international public administration. And she's actually working on her dissertation in this context. Mareike has a bit of a different background. She actually studied political science, German language and literature in Germany and in France. And she also, like I do now, worked some time for the for GIZ, German International Corporation, in Indonesia, where she engaged in research on the decentralization reform in Indonesia and on reducing emissions from deforestation and forest degradation, RED. Her research interests are, among others, EU-Asia relations in environmental governance, international public administrations in environmental governance, and research methods on empirical social science or social network analysis. Mareike will speak to us on how does the governance of NDCs relate to financing possibilities. Mareike, thank you for being here today. The floor is yours. I'll open your presentation.
Yes, thanks a lot for this kind introduction, and we're very delighted to be able to host this event together with our Vietnamese colleagues. I will present today results of a research project we're conducting at the Freie Universität Berlin on the emerging governance networks that we are seeing for NDCs. And I'm conducting this research project together with my colleagues, of which Barbara Zabek is also in the room here in the first row. So what we did pre-Paris is we asked parties and other groups what their preferences on the INDCs were. So I'm taking a step back now. I'm giving you a bird's eye view on what parties and others thought about what INDCs should be. Of course, you know the outcome. You can compare these preferences with what we have today. So we asked participants to a very large survey what they thought about the scope, the time horizon, and the legal form of INDCs. And we gave them several options to choose from to indicate their preferences. We asked, did they want INDCs to be only about mitigation or also about other aspects such as adaptation, capacity building, and finance? We asked them, did they think INDCs should be set in a very short-term horizon, short-term goals, or should they be oriented towards long-term goals? And we asked them what did they think, how should INDCs be legally based? Should the submission of INDCs be an obligation and only the submission, or should also the content be actually anchored in the Paris Agreement? So this is what our participants had to choose from. And the results were quite interesting, we thought. So you see here the different actor groups that we focused on. We asked governments, international organizations, NGOs, business organizations, and research bodies, and a couple of others about their preferences. And we thought it was quite striking that we saw such a huge level of agreement on two of our issues. So the scope and the time horizon were very clear cut, actually to our surprise. As you see in the first third, almost all actor types agreed that they wanted INDCs to be more than only mitigation focused. They wanted it to also include adaptation and other issues. That was pretty clear. Only the business community had a slight difference. They also there were some people that preferred the mitigation only option, but other than that, we have a pretty clear-cut view. Same on the time horizon. So most of our participants said we want INDCs to be long-term. The most contentious issue was the legal nature of INDCs. So if you look, for example, at the government and the NGO answers, they were really, really split. So it was almost half that said, okay, we want only the submission to be binding, and the other half said, okay, we really want the content to be binding. So we see a diverse picture. But our take, what did we take away from this? We actually wanted to know how good is the fit of the Paris Agreement with the preferences of the diverse groups. And of course, the fit of the Paris Agreement will be very good with the preferences of the parties, but we can also see that there's a huge buy-in on what we see today in the Paris Agreement among all other actor groups. So we thought this is a very, very good precondition of implementing NDCs and financing NDCs with very different stakeholders. And in terms of implementation, the next question we asked our participants was, how do they talk to each other? So the second half of our research is about the conversation on NDCs. We wanted to know who talks to whom and who cooperates with whom. And in this picture, we see the different actor groups. We see governments, international organizations, NGOs, businesses, research, and banks, and some other groups. And this picture will show how these different actor groups talk to each other and who cooperates with whom. And in this first picture, we only see the answers of governments indicated as red. And you see that governments talk a lot to governments and cooperate with governments. And of course, this reflects the multilateral nature of the UNFCCC, the party-centered nature of the climate regime. But they also heavily cooperate with international organizations and a little bit with NGOs, business, research, and banks. But so there's a strong preferences of parties to talk among parties, which is of course expectable. Here we see all the what we call the incoming ties to governments. So we see which kind of actors wanted to receive information from parties and wanted to cooperate with parties. And we see that all actor types, of course, are focused on parties. This is normal in this, this party game. We see incoming ties from NGOs, from IOs, basically from all other actors. And if we look at the full picture, this is a bit confusing, but what you can see here is that not only parties tend to stay largely among themselves, but all actor groups also have this slight bias towards cooperating with similar organizations. So we see that the NGO conversation is among NGOs. They tend to speak to each other a lot. We see that also researchers talk to each other a lot. And the picture that we get here is that there's a lot of cross-cutting cooperation and information exchange among these actors, and most actor types have a preferred partner on who to talk to. For example, NGOs and research have a very intense dialogue. They talk to each other a lot. And parties and international organizations also tend to have this special relationship, as do banks and business naturally. So we see a bit of exchange between these groups, but we don't see a world in which everybody is talking to everybody on NDCs and cooperation is really reciprocal among all the actor groups. But we see a slight bias to stay with the actor groups that you know. So this is another picture with the same data. So we see here also the answers to the questions, who do you cooperate with mostly on NDCs, and who do you receive trustful information from? So the bigger the nodes or dots here that you see, the greater the importance of this actor is. That means many people have named this actor as providing trustful information and as a trusted cooperation partner. And we see that, first, we see that representatives from all actor types are important in this dialogue on NDCs. And the most important ones are those actors with the most convening power are still international organizations. So these are the most important platforms where different types of actors can come together to come into dialogue on NDCs. But we also see some important parties here. For this question, parties such as Norway, South Africa, Mexico, and Peru were named very often as to providing information and cooperation opportunities. We also see NGOs, here WWF, this is the most prominent one. We also see representatives from the research communities such as WRI and IISD. And these kind of important nodes are actors that we conceive of as being brokers. So they have the capacity to connect actors from different worlds, from different realities, and to provide information to all of them, to bring them together, and to enforce an increased cooperation between very diverse takes on what the climate regime should be like. So what do we take away from this on financing NDCs? So while we do see that similar actors really tend to cooperate with each other, we see an increasing amount of interactions between different actor groups. And we also see reflected in our data that non-party stakeholders are growing ever more important. This has been, of course, a reality and has been practiced during the last years and during the last COPs, but it is not a reciprocal relationship yet. So we see a big demand from non-party stakeholders wanting to engage in the process, wanting to engage with parties. We see it less from parties, but it is increasing. So we see a system that where multiple impulses come from various sectors and levels to work together. And of course, you saw that some actors have the capacity to really bring these different realities together and act as brokers. So our take was that before Paris, before having this great multilateral agreement, the dominance of the party system, of the party game, was of course very clear. But now that we are moving into implementation and that NDCs actually need to be financed from a diversity of actors, the relationship between these different actor groups has to increase. So we believe that actually we need all hands on deck right now. We need the really mutual reinforcement of different actor groups. So our take would be that the pictures that you have seen should be more colorful and more interconnected in order to ensure that NDCs can actually find the findings that they need. Yes, this is it from our side. I look forward to your questions and discussion.
Mareike, thank you very much. This was for me, a very enlightening presentation on the multi-stakeholder nature and the network nature of the entire process. And very useful graphics, actually, because it's hard to comprehend all that's happening in the process. And with these charts, I think that's a very helpful way to depict this complex nature. Our next presenter is Mr. Chen An Lien from Taiwan. He's an engineer at the Green Energy and Environment Research Laboratories in the Industrial Technology and Research Institute of Taiwan, or the ITRI. Mr. Lien is a researcher of policy and project consultings at the laboratories at ITRI. And he's dedicated to climate change policy and to international collaboration. He joined ITRI already in 2009 to design and launch an information network for mechanisms of climate technology transfer and international green finance. And he has been assisting the Taiwan Environmental Protection Administration on climate policy strategy and on international cooperation services, both in the UNFCCC and also in the Montreal Protocol. He has been, through attending UNFCCC meetings, involved in bilateral and multilateral cooperation among various countries and with private sector partners and research institutes on climate change. Mr. Lien will speak to us on how the case study of MDB technology financing can inform the financing strategy of Vietnam. Mr. Lien, welcome. The floor is yours. I'll open your presentation.
Thank you for the introduction. My name is Chen An Lien. I'm from Green Energy and Environment Research Laboratory from ITRI. ITRI is the largest research institute in Taiwan. Actually, we have 5,000 or 6,000 employees. We are government-funded research basis in Taiwan. In ITRI, we usually have innovated about 1,000 patents per year. So a question comes to my mind is how to disseminate or transfer the feasible technology to the country who actually need. We also find a case that the banker will have a question how to make their investment more efficient. So we have shown you some example about the ITRI work with the EBRD about green energy technology transfer from Taiwan. ITRI is a long-term partner with the EBRD, maybe more than 5 years or 6 years. We also work with the Taiwan International Cooperation Development Fund. It is the fund from different funding and funding source, and it's a small fund, but they will work with the technology research institute or something like other agriculture or water resource or some service institute to help the developing country to solve their demands. So actually, E3 will be some sort of technology provider or a consultant to those the developing country and for the fund. Meanwhile, many people maybe can have noticed that the EBRD have already announced that they will increase their investment fund profile from the green financing objective from a 25% increase to 40%. So right now they are interested to find a partner that, because the banker sometimes they don't actually understand what kind of green technology is. So they have no idea about actually how to make it worse. So they actually need some partner to assist them to assist them to identify actually the technology is work for the desired country. Such as is an example. So Taiwan is actually right now the fourth large fund donor in the EBRD. We actually maybe similar to the Switzerland and Japan and the other country. Since 1991, we already to launch this cooperation fund. Right now, since 2006, right now we already have the Green Energy Special Fund within GSF. This fund will be specially focused on the green energy technology transfer project for the select countries. You can find on the picture on below, because the fund base it's not very big, it's really small. But actually, we want to make some approach, make the this for the banker. They have to understand that the profit can be leveraged. Maybe I invest for $1, but I can make a profit for $100. That's actually banker wants. So for the banker, they also want to lower risk, because if they do the unilateral investment, the risk will be high. So they are seeking to opportunity to co-finance with other country or the investor to the project, so they can lower risk and expand the profit. So in E3, we actually are leading an innovation hub for the major enterprise in Taiwan. So we have a very good connection with the Taiwan enterprise and the industry. We also a good communication with the government, because we are also the consultant institute with the Taiwan EPA and the Energy Bureau. So actually, for the Paris Agreement, the other major issue is about the capacity building. So actually, the E3 is the major technical assistance provider and the incubator for those bankable projects. So we can assist those the developing country or have the technique demand country for training their people to enlarge their capacity building to reach their goals. We have we also we have many years experience with the Taiwan government to conduct all the ESCO and NRV projects. So in Taiwan, actually, we are very the NRV system in Taiwan actually already very mature. But for some developing country, they still need some capacity building about this area to figure out how to actually implement this project. So we back to back to the EBRD. So how the E3 work with the EBRD? Right now, the EBRD have the green economy transition approach. So the first priority, they already announced from 2006, from this year, 2006 to 2020. All the initiative will be green economic transition. So they right now seek all the possible opportunity to increase their investment. So in E3, we will integrate all the stakeholders. So we talk with the local government, we talk with the bankers, we show them what kind of technology we have. Which we also demonstrate to the local governments, say what kind of service and our technology capability is, and they can seek the opportunity in a locally to invest, because the bank, their original thought is if they want to make the locals to invest this case. Because part of co-finance is the project. So the EBRD can expand its initial focus on energy efficiency and the renewable energy project. And they right now already move into the areas of water and material efficiency and climate adaptation. So right now, E3 as a technology partner, we can provide the skill for technical service and our capacity building works. Here's the example in Georgia, Tbilisi. Actually, it's the LED studio light consulting project. We assist the local government to retrofit their street light system, and we conduct we help them to find the borrower and to research their local legally question, and to analysis their risk level, and find a gap. So the EBRD have a big pictures and a good opportunity for the locals to ensure their investment success. We have 3 different working areas. The first is to identify the gap for retrofitting the system. The second is to propose a potential strategy based on this following scenario. We actually analysis different scenario for the local government. So we also perform how they to make the financial analysis, so they can manage how to how much money they want to borrow, and the financing source, and to provide some justification for bankers to consider financial arrangement. So this is our collaboration vision. In E3, we will create a financeable business model to disseminate climate technology. Actually, we have the good ability to assist the developing country if they need some green energy and to become an economy. Because I think that after the Paris Agreement, the green economy will be a new topic for all of us. For some of the developing countries, you have to considering some, because for developing countries sometimes they have a limited capability to R&D service. So E3 can be a part of a technology partner to assist the developing country to develop their own R&D capacity building. We have success the example and the experience work with the multilateral cooperation. So I think for the future project, if the local government can find a good green technology provider and a suitable green finance provider, can work with, together to a green economy transition. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lien. This I didn't know actually how active ITRI already was in the international scene. So very good insight. And one takeaway for me is also that the issue is speaking the right language, coming to a common understanding of what green technology actually is and how banks can and banking can be involved in implementing it. Our next speaker, to my right here, is Mr. Hoang Van Tam of the Ministry of Industry and Trade of Vietnam, the MOIT. Let's wait a moment until the plane has passed overhead. He works in the MOIT on climate change and low carbon development. In the MOIT, he's the vice chairman of the ministry's climate change office, and he's the focal point of the industrial sector on mitigation. Mr. Tam has extended experience working in low carbon development and NAMA development projects. He's also deeply involved in the negotiation processes, especially with energy related issues, such as renewable energy and energy efficiency. Mr. Tam, the floor is yours. I'll pull up your presentation.
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. A kindly introduction for me. And so my presentation today, I'd like to brief information about how the energy development in Vietnam to contribute to the NDC or NDC implementation context. So my presentation not focused closely to the financing mechanism. So I think our information will provide you some more potential about the need of the financial for our activities in Vietnam. So my presentation, we have the four main slides is I would like to provide you about the energy efficiency and renewable energy development and some other activities to promote low carbon development in Vietnam, such as NAMA, CDM, and some study will provide in Vietnam about the carbon market-based instruments. And I can say something about the contribution of the to NDC implementation. And the first one, I think in Vietnam we have implemented the law on energy efficiency from 2010, and we regulated to I think some main parts of the measure in energy consumption in our economy about the intensive energy consumption facilities. We have a regulator strictly about the any facility which consume the over 1,000 TOE per year. And we developed the statistics on energy data in Vietnam. We have some database on energy efficiency in the whole country. And now we are providing and implementing some policy on the labeling on energy utilization in our country. For example, in some motor and some machine and some kinds of the home appliance, and we have to labeling on the 5-star or about the energy consumption. And we are regulated on the many sectors, for example, in transportation, agriculture, construction, and some other heavy and light industry in our country. And now I think under the energy efficiency law, and now I'm preparing and implementing some voluntary program on energy efficiency we have a start starting in February this year. And this program, we focusing on increasing the energy efficiency in the facility in enterprises in our company, and to set up a baseline and to have some promotion to our enterprise in our country to get the higher efficiency or clarity about the energy efficiency. And now we set up a roadmap to remove low technology and applying new technology in the whole country, in the any, especially some of the heavy industry in Vietnam. And in any enterprises involved in this program, we have some promotion from the government about the capacity buildings or trademark promotion in the production, and some finance support for the, for example, about the energy auditing, also providing them technical guidelines about how to implement the energy efficiency option in their enterprises. And now we come to the another renewable energy developments. Now I think in the context of the NDC implementation in the last year, the Prime Minister assumed the decision about the strategic national about the renewable energy development there, and now you can see the potential of the our renewable energy development in our country. With the, you can see about the share of the renewable energy orientation in our country from 2015 to vision to the 2050 is a very too ambitious about the target of the solar and wind and some other kinds of renewable energy. You can see next slide, and you can see the about the hydro. You can see we are maximize about the nearly 30,000 megawatt, and for the solar we hopefully to get addressed about the highest target by 2030 is about the 17,000 megawatt of solar. And now we are very very surprised that we now have a zero about the solar PV. So we set up a target of the 2030. We have a big potential about the solar development. So this is the very large space for the investor in our country to implement in these activities in Vietnam. And for some other program we related to low carbon developments. Now I think in Vietnam we have some project and some activities in related to NAMA and CDM. You can see with the much more experience in the past 10 years. And about this, we have some carbon market-based instruments. And for the government implementation, we have some national target program on energy efficiency from 2006. And now the newest is now we have charter national program on energy efficiency on the national target, not national target, national strategy about the climate change and green wealth. And now we're implementing with the closely cooperating with the line ministry to implement. And we have, I think we have in Vietnam, we have some NAMA designing in related to heavy industry. For example, in the cement sector is Dr. Michael Ra mentioned about the cement which implemented by the Ministry of Construction related to funded by the Norway fund. And now we in my country we have some study about the market-based instruments about the PMR partnership for market readiness. Now we propose to implement for next 3 years, and we hope to see the kinds of financial instruments and to implement in to set up a carbon trade or the carbon pricing maybe in our country to implement. And now we have some cooperate with the other donors to design in NAMA development, for example, in chemical and steel and pulp and paper. And for do this activities, we think about some fund should be established in our country, for example, about the energy efficiency and renewable energy funds. So now we are studying about what kinds of mechanism and what kind of policy should be implemented in our country. We need to support from the international community in the future and to figure out the right energy efficiency or renewable energy funds in our these sectors. And so the last presenter, the slides, I would like to say something about the, of course, when we do any activities related to energy efficiency and renewable energy, we could contribute to amount of GHG reduction in our country. And new policy very important to get involved and to implement in our sector is very important to look forward on the mitigation and low carbon economy. And in our activity, we implement we win more independent from fossil fuel. And of course, during this activity, with our capacity, we should be enhanced and related to climate change. So I think these times are limited. I cannot say anything a lot. And so thank you very much for listening. Thank you.
Mr. Tam, thank you very much for this excellent overview on topics of energy efficiency, renewables, NAMA, CDM, and carbon-based markets, and how this all relates to climate finance in Vietnam. I'm impressed by how much progress has been made, I must say, during the last couple of years. Our last speaker of the day is Mr. Nguyen Tuan An. He graduated from the Asian Institute of Technology in Thailand with a major in industrial engineering and management. Mr. Tuan An has nearly 20 years of working experience in the topics of public investment for environmental protection, climate change, green growth. He has been working on mainstreaming environment and green growth into Vietnam's socio-economic development plan, the well-known SEDP. And he currently works as a Deputy Director General of the Department for Science, Education, Natural Resources and the Environment in the Ministry of Planning and Investment, the MPI, in Vietnam. He actively participates in the development of the Vietnam Green Growth Strategy and the National Green Growth Action Plan. And he will speak to us today on which elements of international financing are actually embedded in the Green Growth Strategy. Mr. Tuan An, the floor is yours. Coming. Can we have the truck?
Thank you very much. After two presentations from Vietnamese side on the first one on the SPRCC special program on, to respond to climate change, and the presentation from the energy sector on the how efficiency energy can apply in Vietnam, I decided to skip some slides in my presentation to show you full pictures how Vietnamese government already prepare to implement the NDC, in which the green growth is the one of the tool to implement the NDC, which just approved by the our government. I would like to show you about the relation between the NDC and the MACC marginal cost curve, urban cost curve options, which already set in the green growth strategy. Based on the foundation of the technical team, we found that the NDC of Vietnam and the MACC options targets in the green growth strategy are the same, in terms of the target that Vietnamese could be achieved. And in the Vietnamese green growth strategy, there is specific activities, there is the policy group, and we found that Vietnam Green Growth Action Plan covers about 55 tasks in the Vietnam NDC action plan, in which the 100% of mitigation contribution. And how the Vietnamese government prepare the works on the policy policy formulation, as well as the preparing. Six ministry included the Ministry of Finance, State Bank of Vietnam, Ministry of Natural Resources and Environment, Ministry of Agriculture, Railroad Development, Ministry of Transportation, and Ministry of Construction already developed the Green Growth Action Plan, while others are on the dry track. Around 10 provinces and cities already approved, while the 20 others are about to be finalized. And business community also actively engaged in the Green Growth Action Plan under coordination of VCCI, Vietnamese Commission Community. And we also are preparing some projects, investment projects under Green Growth Action Plan to be implemented in province and ministries. Here is some NDC and MACC option in agriculture sector, which prepared by the Ministry of Agriculture. And here is the prepared by the Ministry of Transportation, Local Development, and especially some very deeply sectors like aviation industry. They also prepare their action plan to deal with the mitigation options and SNS plans, future plans. And my presenter have some conclusion and recommendation. Green growth strategy is one among the pathway to implement NDC of Vietnam with similar target of the CO2 emission reduction and action plan. And through the Vietnamese green growth strategy, set a target and action plan with different time frame, 2020 to compare with 2030. It shows that Vietnam is strong, has a strong commitment to implement the NDC in Vietnam. And how next? We are also hearing from the presentation, two presentations from the Korea, from the Taiwan and GIZ, and I think that we also need the technology transfer as well as to improve the communication between the partners. But from the Vietnamese side, we think that in the next period, the business community is very important for implementing the NDC, specifically the cement sector, steel sectors, EVN, and also some other like buildings and waste sector. They have to be on board with the communication from the banks, Vietnamese bank, international banks, as well as to transfer the support financing from the international community to the business community. And we at the state organization ministry, we are ready to prepare the framework and like policies as well as the support to connect the business communities to the financing to implement NDC in Vietnam. This is my presentation. I thank you very much for interest. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tonang. You're very well kept to the time, which I'm very grateful for, because now we have about 15 minutes for questions and answers. We have a microphone here, so the floor is open for questions. I see the first question, gentleman here.
Thank you. Thank you.
I think it's worked. Yeah.
Thank you for all the presentation. I think it's very interesting and provide a good picture of Vietnam. And my name is Lai from UNDP. So I would like to congratulate Vietnam again on both ratification of the Paris Agreement and also approval of action plan to implement the Paris Agreement. because the discussion relating to the climate finance for NDC, so I'm very much would like to talk a little bit about the Article 6 that you refer to, and a number of presentation also relating to this Article 6 from, there are two elements. One is from the point 4 to point 7 establish a new mechanism that, and also the point number 8 and number 9. Basically, my question is that relating to 2 points. One is how to define the how to say the baseline. What should be the baseline for support the efforts by developing countries, especially relating to voluntary actions, referring to this article. And the perhaps the second element is that how this mechanism refer to that article, and one is seem to be complement to the CDM, but the second one is a voluntarily basics. How this thinking currently among parties, it should support developing country to enable these two mechanisms. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think we'll take a second question. I see one there in the back, the lady. Could you just stand up maybe there and introduce yourself briefly?
Thank you very much. My name is Sonja Schirmbeck. I'm from the Friedrich Ebert Stiftung, actually working in Vietnam. So I'm very glad to see so many Vietnamese presenters here, and can also only take this opportunity to congratulate you on signing the Paris Agreement. Okay, good. I would have 3 questions. One is for Mr. Michael Lova. We all know that if you would add up all the ambitions in the INDCs/NDCs, we would end up with the world warming about +3 degrees. Now you say that only 85% or 85, there's a request for funding from developing countries covering 85% of these INDCs/NDCs. So my question is, this number of 3 degrees increase, if you take together all INDCs, is this referring to the conditional part or to the unconditional part? And then I have 2 more questions to the presenters, Mr. Tan and Mr. Tam. For Mr. Tan, I would like to ask you whether actually Vietnam already approved the INDCs to become NDCs, or whether there is any possibility to still ratchet up the goal of CO2 reduction or GHG reductions, which is -8% BAU, which is compared to other emerging countries, I think not that high, compared to the Philippines, for example, with -80%, or Morocco with -52. So is there still room to ratchet that up? And for Mr. Tam, I would like to ask, of course, it's very impressive to see this increase in renewable energies in Vietnam, but we are all aware of the statement of the president of the World Bank saying that Vietnam, and if Vietnam and some other Asian countries really build all the coal-fired power plants that are now planned to be built, then we are done even with the 2 degrees target. And as far as I know, the plans of Vietnam are still that in 2030, more of 50% of the energy production will come from coal. So maybe you could say some words on that, and also whether nuclear power might play a role in Vietnam's energy mix in future as maybe a HG neutral energy form, but of course, which has many other risks. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for these questions. We actually have 5 questions now, and before taking more questions, I would like to give an opportunity to the presenters to reply. Mr. Tan, perhaps if you could start with the question on approving the INDC to become an NDC.
So it's already mentioned in the Paris Agreement and COP21. So when we ratify the Paris Agreement, we have no change with our current INDC, so it automatically become NDC. So you ask on the room for improvement. Yes, still room for improvement, of course. When we developed our NDC, we already see that it is fit with our circumstance currently and predict the until 2030. So from now until 2030, of course, we will regularly update our INDC, now become NDC. So we'll see if economies of Vietnam to much improve, we can make our higher contribution, of course, based on the first round of global stock taking in 2018, we would consider that one. So yes, still room for improvement, of course.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tan. We are going backwards through the questions, so we will come to the baseline for support as the last question. It's not forgotten. I would like to continue, Axel, with you. The question on conditional versus unconditional.
Well, it's clear that this famous 3 degrees has been taken, the NDCs at face value, so lumping together the conditional and non-conditional. So of course, if now there is an understanding that the non-conditional is not receiving sufficient, the conditional one is not receiving sufficient climate finance, then we have a problem that the temperature increase may be even more. So it is very clear that we need to address the challenge, as I said, and the market mechanisms could play an important role. Just as Christoph was mentioning the baseline question, what is the baseline for support? That has also, of course, an impact on the market mechanisms, because if we now specify a certain baseline for support, it might be interpreted by some as being the baseline for the market mechanisms. I would warn because baseline definition for market mechanism should be linked to the costs of the measures, as I showed the marginal abatement cost curve, and not to an artificially set differentiation between non-conditional and conditional.
Thank you, Axel. You have very gracefully answered already 3 questions in one now. Would anyone like to add to the question of defining the baseline for support? Before then we come to the question on the energy mix. I don't see any additional voices here. Then Mr. Tam, there was a question to you, the question on the energy mix in Vietnam now and in 2050.
Yes, okay. Thank you very much for your question. So, as you know, in Vietnam, the Prime Minister is still the Power Development Plan 7 revised, approved by the March of 2016. And so you can see our plan and target for the share of electricity and power from the coal power plant is about the 50% of from the coal power plant by 2030. So I think you can see but you can see in the in the strategic of renewable energy in Vietnam issued by the Prime Minister. We set up the very high target about the renewable energy. We want to do the parallel with the 2 programs, big program in our country. And to hope to less depends on the coal power plant development in the future. If we have a success in our strategy on the renewable energy, we less depends and reduce the share of the electricity from coal power plant in the future. Because as you know, when we prepare and revise the power plant in the Vietnam, we have to see the circumstances of the country, and we have to base on the coal power plant so much about the how to provide the electricity or energy security in our country. So I think in Vietnam we have a strictly about the environmental law on the pollution law in Vietnam. We focusing on the many solutions to have a less emission and to less emission pollution to the environment. So I hope the coal power plant will contribute to the cleaner energy in Vietnam. And another things I think in some cooperation with the international communities, we hope to design some other programs such as the NAMA. So initial idea with my leaders yesterday and some corps, we work together. We think about the NAMA on the electricity in Vietnam in the future. I hope during this the activity will have less the low carbon. We develop the low carbon technology in the electricity sectors in Vietnam. So I think I would like to share some of my ideas about that. So about the how to develop and how to implement the electricity in a coal power plant, particularly, and I think we have a long story about that. So we will cooperate with all of you to how to less the coal power plant in our planet. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tam. This is indeed a challenging issue. I think we'll take two more questions before we go into the break. I've seen one gentleman over here and one gentleman over there. Would you please mind keeping your questions very short because we don't have that much time left. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Peter Viet. I'm from Denmark. Does it work? From CARE Denmark and the Southern Voices program. I'm curious to learn about the adaptation part of the Vietnam NDC, and because there's a special challenge of financing adaptation. I noted with interest in the presentation from the Taiwan colleague that you mentioned that the European Bank of Reconstruction and Development is actually moving into financing also climate adaptation initiatives. So if there is a scope for private finance of adaptation, that would be very interesting to follow.
Thank you. Let's take the second question.
Thank you. Greetings. My name is Shafiqullah Fahim. My question is maybe it's a little bit outside of the box. A lot of climate change, Vietnam's climate change policies have put a lot of burden on indigenous people who have claimed a lot of right on the forestry areas. So now that you have ratified the Paris Agreement, your policies will change. How the policy implementation will affect the indigenous Vietnamese people who are resided in forest areas. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Perhaps let's go from the back. Mr. Tonang, do you think that MPI would have a reaction on this question on indigenous people and mainstreaming climate change in the forestry sector?
During the last 5 years, the climate change already mainstream and integrated into the development strategy of the provinces. Of course, in the national level and SNS in the provincial level. And the indigenous groups and SNS, the same target group also are under several national programs to be covered. Not only climate change, because as you know, climate change adaptation is the cross-cutting. Climate change is itself as cross-cutting. It's linked also with the we have the forestry program. We have the poverty reduction program. We have the long coastline program, and all of this national program, the citizen in the remote area, as well as indigenous people, are the high priority group in terms of investment and the policy, such as subsidized policy. And I think that we in Vietnam, we can say that we already, from government side, we already have the sufficient investment for those people through different programs, not only climate change program, through different development program, which related with climate change. And we always saying that climate change is not one sector. It is at least 2 or 3 sectors in the adaptation side: forestry, long coastline, many things. I can show you in details in the one report prepared by MPI. Is the CPIR, climate public expenditures. In this, you can see that which side, how they are taking care about the indigenous people. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tonang. The last question on adaptation, I would like to ask Mr. Tan to respond, and that's a point we can continue discussing afterwards also, I think.
For adaptation side, yes, Vietnam considers in the now still adaptation is our priorities. So in the plan of implementation of Paris Agreement in Vietnam, we would focus the resources for implementing adaptation science in Vietnam mostly come from government budget, include the ODA, international support directly to government of Vietnam. For mitigation, we would see the major source of fund would come from private sector with the support with the leverage level from the government side. So that is a view when we developed our plan for implementation of the Paris Agreement in Vietnam. For the cost of adaptation from now until 2020, we estimate that it's around 30 billion US dollars. That means 1/6 of our GDP for adaptation from now until 2020. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tan. That's a big topic, adaptation, which is also close to my heart. So let's continue discussing that after the event. We have reached the end. Our time is up. I would like to thank all the presenters here with me on the podium of having given a very excellent overview where Vietnam is at with implementing its NDC. And the various perspectives we have also had from the outside on climate finance and on governance and networking. I consider this a very, very great achievement that Vietnam has made. As you have said, Mr. Tan, 10 ministries, 50 departments, 6 co-development partners, $1 billion US. And that's a huge challenge in terms of governance, networking. And as you said, one needs policy, one needs capacity building, and ultimately that has to lead to investment. Thank you all very much for coming today. This was an excellent event. I enjoyed it very much. We have catering now outside when you leave the room on your left-hand side, and I look forward to continuing the discussions there. Thank you.